Welcome to the Michigan 4-H Children's Garden Pollination Lab. My name is Jessica Wright, and I'm an educational coordinator for the Michigan 4-H Children's Garden. And today, we are going to explore pollination. And one of the first things that we need to be familiar with are the parts of a flower. And so we're going to take a look here at the parts of what's called a perfect flower. So a perfect flower has both male and female parts. So we're going to take a look at our example here on the board of a perfect flower. So let's start with some of the most obvious parts. We'll take a look at the petals. So here on our flower we can see the petal structures, and the reason that flowers have petals is to attract these pollinators. So they come in different shapes, sizes, colors, and that will help to determine what type of pollinator will come to that type of flower. And so these right here are the petals. And then if we take a look down here, would be the stem. So this is where it would be attached to the plant. And then these are called the sepals right here. These are the little structures that protect the bud when it comes out. So this is the sepal. And then this flower has both male and female parts, and we'll start here. We'll go ladies first, and we'll start here with the female part of the flower. So the whole female structure of the flower is called the pistil. Just like I try to remember that girls are pistols. So this is the whole structure, and then the pistil is split up into different parts. So here on the top, right here, this is called the stigma, and it's sticky. So that's, I usually try to remember, sticky stigma. And the reason that it's sticky is this is where the pollen is transferred. So this is the structure where what the pollen sticks to. So we've got the sticky stigma, and then we head down here. And this long tube-like structure is called the style, because girls have style. And so this is the style. And then this structure right here, this swollen structure is called the ovary. And then inside of the ovary is where the seeds would be created, and those are called ovules. But this big structure right here is what would turn into the fruit. So if we were looking at this flower and it was an apple blossom, which it kind of looks like, it's just missing a few petals, then this structure right here would turn into our apple once pollinated. So that's the female part, the pistil. And then if we take a look at the male structure of our flower, that's these right here, and these are called the stamens. And actually has the word men in it, so we can remember that that's the male part. And this is made up of two structures, the anther, which holds the pollen, and then the filament, which holds the pollen up. And when we talk about the bees, we'll talk about why that's important, but the stamen has two structures, the anther and the filament. Now, when we're talking about pollination, what would happen is this flower is calling to a bee. We can see right here. So there's a honeybee that would come to this flower, and once they get there, I have my little buzzy bee here. Once the bee gets there, they're looking for nectar mostly. Now, honeybees are going to forage on pollen, and they do eat pollen, so they may be looking for pollen, but let's just say maybe it was a butterfly or something that doesn't use pollen. They're going to be looking for nectar, right? So the flower, the plants are so smart, the flower is going to have nectaries down here at the base of the flower. So basically what that means is that the insect or animal has to come down far enough into the flower that its mouth part can reach the nectar. And so for our honeybee, their mouth part isn't very long. It's not like a butterfly. So they've got to get pretty close. And so their hairy bodies, as they're coming in to get the nectar, the pollen is rubbing off on this hairy body. And then what they're going to do is they're going to fly away and come to another flower, and when they come, the pollen that was on that hairy body is going to stick on that sticky stigma. And that means once that pollen gets stuck on that sticky stigma, that this flower has been pollinated. So once our flower is pollinated, this plant switches gears from being in a part of its life cycle where it's producing flowers to now where it's going to put energy into making the fruit. So that's why pollination is an important part of the plant life cycle, because it's the signal for this plant to switch gears and to start making its fruit. So now we know the basic structure of the flower. Let's take a look at real flowers and see if we can identify some of the parts.
So the first flower we're going to take a look at here is from a spider plant. And this is a really great specimen to take a look at because the pollen on the anthers is very prominent. You can see the white the white filament and then the yellow anther very, very easily. And then here's the stigma right here. I know it's kind of hard to see because it is also white, but oftentimes the stigma will stick above the anthers, and that just helps, again, as that pollinator is coming in to the flower. If it sticks up above, then it's definitely going to be able to have contact with that insect. So this is one example right here. And here's another common house plant. And we can also, again, see the pollen. There's a little bit coming off on my finger. You can kind of see the dust flying there a little bit. So we can see the pollen. And then if I pull the male parts aside, there's the white stigma and style of the pistil right there. So these are all perfect flowers we're going to be showing you today. This one's kind of fun because the pollinator's got a little bit of a chore to do, right? Because the flower's not open. And so these are most commonly pollinated by bumblebees because they're big and they can push through with no problem. So what happens is the bumblebee's going to kind of push this open. And then the reason that this is such an ingenious mechanism for a flower is because the flower basically closes onto the bee's body, and then as it closes on it, it's kind of clamping it down so it can make sure that the pollen gets on the sticky stigma. So if we open it up, again, we can see the pollen. There you can see a good swipe of the pollen right there on my finger. So again, that would be right on the bumblebee's body. So we can see the anther and the filament, and in this case the stigma and the pistil, the female part of the flower, is green. So this is the stigma, and oftentimes, my finger's all powdery right now, but oftentimes if you touch it very gently, you can feel kind of a little bit of resistance from the stickiness on it. So then we've seen lots of examples here of yellow pollen, but this petunia actually has like a purple pollen, which is really interesting and kind of different. So here's the inside of our petunia flower, and here we can see the purple pollen. And then we dissect these a lot with the students that come, and the stigma is very sticky. You can see like the sticky honey almost if you touch it. So this is a really good example to show people the stickiness of the stigma and the pollen getting stuck to it. So these petunias are a really good one to dissect. They're easy to see, and they have the very distinct sepals. We didn't really talk about that, but here we can see the sepals on the snapdragon, here on the spider plant as well. So it's kind of like the perfect flower to show. I mean, a lily's the best one, but these are great too. Then here's some white pollen on this petunia here. So it's just kind of fun to explore the different colors of pollen. They all have very similar shapes though, in terms of the anthers and the filaments, the stigmas. They're all very similar in shape, size, and in orientation where they are in the flower in these different examples we provided today.